This is the first lesson of Unit 6, which is on compound interest. This specific note will be talking about simple interest. So in order to calculate simple interest is calculated as a percent of the balance on an investment or loan using the formula I equals PRT. So again, remember when we have letters or numbers right beside each other, that means we're multiplying them together. So I stands for interest, which is accumulated over time. P stands for principal, which is just the initial amount. R stands for interest rate, which is always going to be expressed as a decimal. And lastly, T stands for time, which is expressed in terms of years. So simple interest is added to the principal at the end of the period using the formula A equals P plus I. Okay, so to figure out how much simple interest, to figure out the total amount, we take the simple interest, we add it to the initial amount, and we are able to get our total amount. So A just stands for total amount. And that total amount comes from the principal, which is your initial amount of money that you put in, plus the interest that you earn on that money. So interest rate, which is R. So it says show the following interest rates as they would appear in the simple interest formula as R. So remember, R has to be a decimal, right? So we can see we're given percents here, so we're going to need to turn them into decimals. So in order to do that, we have two options. We can divide by 100, or we can simply move 2 decimal places to the left. So if you can't actually see a decimal place, that means it's after the last number. So if that was my decimal place, I want to move it 2 to the left. 1, 2, that's where my new decimal place would be. So 0.13 is 13% as a decimal. And if you just divide by 100, you're going to get the same answer. Use your calculator, divide by 100, that's 0.025. Again, move that decimal place, 1, 2. If you have a blank, that means you need to add a 0. So this is 0.005 as a decimal. Okay, and you're going to have to do that every single time with these questions. Because interest rate has to be a decimal, it won't work if you put it in as the full percent. For time, we need to express the following lengths of time in terms of years. Okay, so T always has to be in terms of years. So if it tells you that the time period is 1 year or 2 years, you're good, right? That's already in terms of years. But if you're given something in months or in weeks or in days, that's going to be a bit different, right? Because we need to figure out basically how many years is 24 months. So in order to figure that out, what we're going to do, when we're given months, we know there's 12 months in a year, right? So we need to divide by 12 months. Okay, and if we do 24 divided by 12, that means 24 months is 2 years. Okay, we would do the same thing for this one because it's also in months. So we're dividing by 12 because that's how many months are in a year. You're not always going to get a whole number, right? On your calculator here, you're going to get 0.67 years. Okay, so this one is in weeks, right? So what we need to do here, we know that there's 52 weeks in a whole year. So instead of dividing by months, we're actually going to divide by years. So you're always dividing by the same time period that you're given. So months divided by months, this is weeks, so we need to divide by weeks. If we do that, again, you won't always get a whole number. 14 weeks is 0.27 years. And lastly, we have 82 days. So to figure out how many years or how much of a year 82 days is, we're going to divide. We have to divide by days. And we know that there's 365 days in a whole year. So when we do that, we get 0.22 years. Okay, so as a general rule of thumb here, in the simple interest formula, time must be expressed in terms of years. So if time is given in months, we need to divide by 12. Okay, because there's 12 months in a year. If it's given in weeks, we have to divide by 52 because there's 52 weeks in a year. If it's given in days, we need to divide by 365. Okay? And again, that's because 1 year equals 12 months, which equals 52 weeks, which equals 365 days. Okay, those are all equal. They're just based in different time measurements. Okay, so let's move on to some examples here. So example 1, it says calculate how much interest is earned if $2,000 is invested at 4.5% simple interest for 26 weeks. So you're going to always be given 3 pieces of information here. So we know that $2,000 is invested. We know that it's 4.5% simple interest over 26 weeks. So always before we start, you're going to want your equation to be kind of visible. So I equals PRT. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write those out on the side of our page. I, P, R, and T. Because we need to know what each of those equals, and we need to figure out what we're solving for. Okay, so it's asking us how much interest. We know I is our interest, so that's what we're trying to find. P is our principal, so P is the initial amount that we invested from our equation. It tells us that is $2,000. Our rate, remember, is our percent written as a decimal. So we move that decimal place 2 spots over. So that's 0.045. And our time needs to be in terms of years. So because it gives us the weeks, we're going to look back to our last page, and it says if it's given in weeks, we need to divide by 52. So that's exactly what we're going to do. 26 divided by 52 is 0.5 years. Okay, so now that we have all of the information, it's just a matter of simple substitution. So we have our equation. We're just going to substitute in the values. So if P equals 2,000, we're replacing P with 2,000. R equals 0.045, we're replacing R with 0.045, etc. Okay, so I, we don't know, so we're going to leave that as our variable. P is 2,000. And we're going to write it in brackets, right? When we substitute, we always try to write in brackets. And remember, what these brackets are telling us is that we need to multiply. So all we have to do is multiply all of these things together. You can do that in one step on your calculator. 2,000. Hang on. Did I mess something up here? I equals PRT. Yeah. So on our calculator, just simply 2,000 times 0.045 times 0.5 equals. I equals 45. Okay, so that means that we would make $45 of interest over 0.5 years. Okay, so it says how much is the investment worth? So to figure out how much the investment is worth, again, we were given a formula for that on our last page. we had A equals, A meaning total amount, principal plus interest. So our principal is what we invested initially, $2,000, plus our interest of $45. Okay, add those two together. We get $2,045. Okay, that's how much money we would make if we invested $2,000 for half a year with 4.5% simple interest. Okay, so that's how we calculate I, which is interest, and A, which is total amount. Okay, we have the simple interest triangle that will help us if we're not trying to find I. So this is if we're trying to find P, R, or T. Okay, so we are going to use our triangle here to remember our formulas. Okay, so in this case, we know that I equals PRT, right? PRT is on the bottom, I equals PRT. So because they're all beside each other. If we want to figure out what P equals, what we're technically going to do is just put our finger over P and see what's left. So what's left is I on the top and RT on the bottom. So P actually equals I over RT. Okay, so we would do the same thing to figure out R. We'd put our finger over R. We see that we have an I on top again. And this time we have P and T on the bottom. So we would have I over PT. Okay, and then for the last one, same thing. For T, we're going to just cover it up. We have I on the top and PR on the bottom. So our formula to find time is interest over principal times rate. So just from this simple triangle here, we're able to figure out all of those formulas. Okay, so use that to your advantage. Okay, so example 2. How much principal is needed to earn? So how much principal is needed to earn $500 in interest in 2 years invested at 2.5% simple interest? So again, I'm going to start by writing out all of my different parameters or all of my different variables. So I have I have P, R, and T. So I is interest, right? So in our question, we notice that it's before it was asking us how much interest are we going to earn. This time, what it's asking us is how much principal do we need? So it gives us our interest is $500. Okay, our principal is what we're trying to find. Our rate, remember, is just our percent as a decimal, so divide it by 100. We'll get 0.025. And our time needs to be in years. It already is in years, so we don't have to do any math there. It's just simply 2. Okay, once we have that information, all we have to do is use the correct formula. So we're trying to find P. That means we need to use this formula here. So it's just a matter of substitution. I is 500. R is 0.025. And T is 2. Okay, so we just have to simplify that, right? So we want to simplify the bottom first. 0.025 times 2 is 0.05. And 500 divided by 0.05 is 10,000. Okay, so again, understanding what that actually means. That means, so we can say, therefore, to make $500 interest, invest $10,000. Okay, so if we wanted $500 of interest in 2 years at this specific rate, we would have to invest $10,000. Okay, next question. What rate of simple interest is needed? So again, you're highlighting as you go. So what rate, okay, is what the question is asking us, is needed to get $7,000 to grow to $10,000 in 5 years. So again, you're always going to get 3 pieces of information and you'll be solving for the 4th. So again, I'm going to write out IPRT. So this one we have to do kind of an extra step here. So it's not necessarily telling us how much interest, but it's telling us our starting value and how much we want to end up with. So what we need to do is just take that $10,000, subtract the $7,000, and we'll see how much interest would be earned. So 10,000 minus 7,000 means that our interest is 3,000. Okay, what we're starting with is just in our question. It says we're starting with $7,000. It's asking us what rate, so that's what we're going to have to find. And our timeline here, it's already in years, is just 5. Once we have all of that information written out, we just have to use the correct formula and solve for the variable. So in this case, we're trying to find rate, so we are using this middle formula here. So R equals, I'll just leave it up, I guess, so you can see. So R equals, I is 3,000 divided by our principal, which is 7,000, times our time, which is 5 years. Okay, so again, you're just using your calculator. You want to simplify the bottom first. So 7,000 times 5 is 35,000. 3,000 divided by 35,000 is 0.086. Okay, remember that in our equation, our R we need to represent with a decimal, but we want to actually know the rate here, so we have to do the opposite. So to get this into a percentage, or to get it into a decimal rather, we divide it by 100. So the opposite, to get this into a percent, we would multiply by 100, which means that our rate is 8.6%. Okay, and your decimals, if you are doing this along with me, your decimals might be a little off if you kept more than I did. Okay, so your percent might be actually 8.57. But we are just going to round up to 8.6%. Okay, last question. How long, so again, highlighting as we go, because we want to know, it's not always clear what we're looking for, right? So we need to figure that out based on the question. How long would it take $1,500 to grow to $2,000 at a rate of 3%? So again, I'm going to write out on my side IPRNT. So again here, it's not telling us our interest, right? We have to kind of calculate it. We know how much we want to grow and we know how much we started with, so we just have to do a subtraction. So 2,000 minus 1,500, that means we were making $500 in interest. Okay, we initially put in 1,500 and our rate as a percent, or sorry, as a decimal is 0.03. Okay, and our time, it's saying how long. Anytime it says how long, it's asking you for the time period. So, as you probably would have guessed, we need to use this last equation, which is T equals I over PR. So, T equals interest, which was 500, over P times R. So again, always simplify the denominator first, which is 45. And then all you have to do is take your numerator divided by your denominator. You're going to get approximately 11.1 years. And again, making sure you understand what that's actually saying. It's saying in order to make $500 off of your initial $1,500 investment at a rate of 3%, you would have to keep this money in the investment for just over 11 years. Okay, so this is the end of the first note on compound interest.